maybe isn't even talked about as much is even beneath all that or underneath all that. How is this affecting the psyche, the mentality of a lot of Asian American youth being seen and targeted and told that they don't belong or that they're a foreigner, or, how can this affect them? And so even yesterday, we had a great conversation with somebody who's working for the government and represents New York. And she said the biggest thing that Asian American youth need is confidence. I mean, that's mind blowing. There's a lot of things from, you could say meals, you could say education, you could say tutoring. I mean, she said confidence and mental health services are two of the most important underlooked things that are happening. And so when we talk about the effects of bullying, the effects of what we're seeing in the news, like these things need to be addressed. And that's why it's so important when you talk about anti-bullying, when you talk about mentality, I mean, it comes back to that.
Well, for some of those kids out there who might be struggling with their confidence levels right now, do you have any words of advice or things that you would want to share?
I mean, my thing has always been, don't let somebody who doesn't know you tell you who you are. And I struggled a lot with that when I was younger. And I would get on the court and some guy I never met would say something to me and it would make me feel bad or worse about myself or worse about my skin color. And I realized he doesn't know anything about me. I've put in the work. I've done everything to become a great basketball player. I know who I am. I know what I've done. And I know the people that love me. And I'm going to dive into my identity and who I am and who the people around me know I am versus what somebody else who doesn't know me is saying about me. And the worst part about it is what I kind of realized is a lot of people that bully or say harmful things, usually it's because they are hurting themselves inside. And that also allowed me to flip things around where it's like, hey, I actually have compassion towards even a bully or somebody that may say something ignorant.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. There's so many young people that I know look up to you, and those words are going to mean so much to them. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Today, we want to highlight AAPI voices who are speaking up and speaking out. This Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, our platinum sponsor, Netflix, is providing a big platform for this. Check out this video of some powerful AAPI voices, many of whom you will hear from later today.
My fellow Americans, we've got some work to do.
Believe it or not, there are different types of Asians.
Obviously.
We aren't watered-down versions of two great things.
Asian Americans are great 2 times over.
So whether it's behind the camera, in front of a camera, or nowhere near a camera,
we are going to make it impossible to ignore us.
So welcome to our world, and leave your shoes at the door.
Next up, we have some of the most iconic, groundbreaking AAPI figures in beauty and fashion. To kick things off, I'll pass it over to Michelle Lee.
Hey everyone, and thank you, Malik. I'm Michelle Lee, the editor-in-chief of Allure and a proud member of Act to Change's Advisory Council. I'm so excited to be here today with all of you for our beauty and fashion panel for our 3rd annual National AAPI Day Against Bullying and Hate. Thank you all so much for joining us, and a big welcome to our panelists, Prabal Gurung, Deepika Mutyala, and Bretman Rock. I'm beyond excited to be here with these 3 fashion and beauty icons who are all transforming the industry with their gorgeous, innovative designs, their unapologetically outspoken attitudes, and their overall commitment to redefine beauty standards and be more inclusive. As we all know, AAPI kids are sometimes bullied for their appearance because they don't look like everyone else in school, and it can have lasting effects on self-esteem. I know that I've experienced that. Deepika, let's start with you. Did you ever experience something similar? And if so, when did you realize that you were beautiful?
My entire childhood, is that like a right time to start? Like my whole life, I grew up in Texas, and the standard of beauty around me was the same thing that I saw in the magazines and on TV. It was blonde hair, blue eyes, to the point where I dyed my hair blonde. I got blue contacts to look like that. And I look back at those photos now, and I'm so grateful that now at the age of, I would say at 30 is when I finally feel like I finally felt confident in who I am and what I look like in my natural skin. But it took 30 years to get there. And I think a big part of it is because of what I saw in the media and everything around me. And hopefully what, everyone on this panel is going to change for the next generation. I wish I realized how beautiful my unique features that make me who I am are actually what make me stand out and the best parts about me. But I didn't have that as a kid.
Yeah, I so relate to that. Prabal, how about you?
Well, I grew up in Nepal, and I went to an all-boys British Catholic school, and growing up, I was a very effeminate kid, and I used to get bullied, I used to get called names, and I pretty much early on realized that, the world that we were living was worshiping the Eurocentric features constantly. Anything in close proximity to that was considered beautiful, even within our community. Like there's colorism, there's all of that stuff. So I remember it was early on I realized that, I was never going to get any kind of validation from the outside world. So I just kind of kept on telling myself that I was beautiful. And I remember I was pretty, in my 12 or 13 years old, I used to tell my mother that, I was like, I see my worth. The world just needs to catch up to it. Here's the thing. Anyone who looks like me, anyone who doesn't look white or blonde hair, blue eyes, as Deepika said earlier, is, you're always going to be the other, right? Whether exotified or whether completely discarded. And especially in the gay world that we live in, which is even more so problematic, because you would think that community is really accepting and welcoming, but it is even harsh in the way they reject anyone who don't fit into the stereotypical idea of what is celebrated. And I would get comments like, "Oh, you're cute for an Asian," or "You're oh, are you mixed race?" So on and so forth. And the implication that my attractiveness is simply due to the proximity to the whiteness is always the unspoken truth, right? So when I look back in this particular moment, I'm really grateful what I went through, because guess what? I learned early on my freedom lies in not seeking validation from outside world. So yeah.
Bretman, how about you?
Yeah. First of all, I can't believe I'm in a panel with Prabal. Oh my God, thank you. That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. So thank you for that. For me, fortunately, I grew up in an island. I live in Hawaii, and a lot of everyone here kind of is Asian and Pacific Islanders. And so, to be honest with you, a lot of people when I moved to America look like me, because in Hawaii, there's so many Asian people. But the problem with the division was not because I looked different. It was because I was from somewhere that was different. And so people that would bully me per se, it was because I had an accent, or it's because I was slower than most kids, because I learned at a slower pace because I didn't understand English. And so to me, I felt ugly because I felt stupid, and the other kids made me feel stupid because I was not from America. And so to answer your question, to be honest, girl, I've always been beautiful. Let's get that out of the way.
Yes.
Let's it was not my beauty that made me insecure. It was the fact that I didn't speak the same language or didn't learn as fast as the other kids were, and they made fun of me because of that. But beautiful wise, girl, I got that on tap.
I love it. So Deepika, I want to shift back to you. So first of all, congratulations on being named as one of Forbes magazine's entrepreneurs who are redefining the American dream. And as you know, we were just DMing about it earlier today. I'm a huge fan of Live Tinted. But what has it meant to you that you're successfully creating these products and ultimately creating avenues and options for people who haven't necessarily found makeup that's meant for them before and for their own skin color?
It means everything. I think that what Prabal said, one thing that I absolutely relate to is the idea of I am grateful that I went through that, because it's motivated me and fueled me with my own brand to make a change in the world. And, to me, in a very saturated beauty market, as we all know, the products to me are a vehicle for the message. It's a feeling that people have when they hold this product, that they know they're a part of a community that wants to change colorism, that wants to change racism, and make it so the beauty world is way more truly, genuinely, and non-performatively inclusive. And that is what I think is so important that the world sees. And I go back to the little Deepika who hid from the sun her whole life. I have active memories of hiding under an umbrella because I didn't want to get a shade darker. I knew if I went home, my mother would cry. She literally cried when I came home and I was darker, because that wasn't considered beautiful. And I fundamentally believe that that kind of mindset can change with this generation if we all do our part to change it.
And I love that message, because as someone who works in beauty and fashion, I think that a lot of times we're sort of seen as working in something that seems frivolous, but actually I'm a huge believer that beauty and fashion can have such a strong cultural message too. So I love hearing that. Okay, problem. Your designs have been worn on countless Met Galas, award ceremonies, magazine covers. You're a favorite of some of our favorite celebrities and world leaders. Who were some of the role models that you had, though, growing up, or some of the mentors that you had in your career that showed you that you could be successful in fashion? And then part two of this also is, and how does it feel now? Like, what is it like that you're a role model to so many AAPI youth?
First of all, you know, the fact that you even said that I'm a role model to AAPI, you don't even think about it. I don't really think about it. I just know that, you know, what I need to do it with intention and the awareness of responsibility, that the success and the privilege, the spotlight that I have, it is just not for me. So I operate with that, right? The rest of it is just, I'm not more than I do besides that. In terms of role modeling, and perhaps the fact that I come from a single mother who raised me and my siblings, surrounding us with like strong female role models, right? I saw pretty early on the power of women. I would say the power of dressing up, the power of choices. That's what I think it was, you know. For me, my mother, my sister, you know, our first female vice president, Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, all these women have, you know, who've believed in my designs and have worn them. They've given me a platform and, you know, to increase my visibility. And so the courage to be yourself, the courage to be your unapologetic self and show up in your full glory, however that is for you, you know, that is what excites me. I always say, you know, people have always asked, what turns you on? I always say it's the courage and, you know, integrity.
Bretman, you certainly have shattered cultural expectations of what it means to wear makeup, to dress how you want to dress. Where did this confidence come from in you? And what advice would you have for our young audience members who maybe feel like they're not allowed to express their true selves?
I think my powers definitely came from my grandma, and I don't want to copy Mr. Pablo's answer, but women definitely gave me the superpowers that I have today. The first time I ever wore makeup was, I was literally just watching my grandma put on makeup. I would always watch my grandma put on makeup for church at her fainting chair, and I would just like sit there and I would watch her put on makeup for like hours. And I remember just like falling in love with women and vanity and everything that has to do with getting ready. Like I love getting, like I literally will get ready just to get ready. I don't even have anywhere to go. I just love like making myself look and feel pretty because that's just how I am. But my powers definitely came from my grandma. She has always told me that we would literally go to church. She would put blush on me, and girl, I would walk into church ready to pray to God on my knees. And I remembered like just one time, I still honestly don't remember what the pastor was talking about, because girl, who is paying attention at church? Not me. So I was over there at church, and I remembered her just like turning around to me, and she's like, Brett, like sometimes they're wrong, and you don't have to listen to him. And I was like, girl, I really was not listening already, so I don't know what he just said, but I know he was talking about like gays don't deserve rights or something like that. So yeah, it would have to be like my grandma. She just told me not to listen to anyone else but myself, and that's that.
Do you have advice for anyone else out there who maybe isn't feeling so confident?
I would say that what makes you weird is going to be your weapon. People don't realize that you need to foster what makes you you. We are programmed to be different from each other, and I don't know how in the evolution we just all wanted to look like one person, and no, that's not it. And I think like as humans, we're programmed to be individuals, you know? Yeah. And yeah, and I think once we all kind of like really take care of what makes us weird, I just think we all just become unstoppable. Because once I figured out that, girl, I'm such a weird ass person, no one's gonna understand me, no one's gonna get me, and honestly, like no one looks like me. So yeah, that's just what gets me about my day. It's just like I'm me as hell.
Bravo. I love that so much. Okay, so Deepika, I know one of your goals is to not only shift the beauty industry to be more inclusive of all skin tones, but to also make sure that young South Asian women shouldn't be ashamed of their natural melanin. What do you think is the biggest barrier to changing beauty standards?
I think it's unlearning. There's a lot of unlearning we all have to do, and it's going to take literally these kinds of conversations. People like Brett Mann of unapologetically being themselves, and I echo what he says that like, sorry, he, him, her, she, they, themselves.
I'm everything. I never fit in anything, so I was like, I'm just everything.
I love it. That's what it is. And I had the exact same experience. When I used red lipstick under my eyes to mask dark circles, people were like, what the hell is she doing? But I talked about something that was unique to me and a problem I had in my life as a South Asian woman. And that changed my entire career. So I feel like anyone out there, I think all of us are examples of people who leaned into our weirdness and our superpower. And it's what made our careers.
Okay, so Prabal.
Yes.
You said in an interview recently that you were advised to limit the diversity of your runways because clients wouldn't be as receptive to non-white models, and that, quote, 2 Black women, 2 Asian women are enough. You know how I feel about that. What would you say now to those people who advise you to cater to the white gaze and to change your vision to mold to white expectations?
You know, we can't look at beauty in such a myopic way. You know, diversity everywhere should become the norm. And it's just not about plus size, it's not about race, it's about gender, it's about everything, it's about age, you know. So to those who challenge me, I say, check your eye. Clothes that you wear, colors that you see, tastes that you savor, food that you like, sounds that you listen to, things that you call chic, people you call beautiful. Check how much of it is informed from a Eurocentric colonial point of view. Then it is totally up to you to realize, do you want to embrace it, dismantle it, modify it? You know, it's totally up to you, but check you must.
I just have to say what I appreciate about both Prabal and Michelle with your platforms and what you guys can do is the lack of tokenism, because I think that has to change too. It can't just be about one face on the cover of a magazine, but when you open Allure, you're seeing constantly diversity, and that is Prabal's shows. It's like, it's not just about that one token person. You're fighting to change that. And I think that needs to be the mindset. It can't just be your token of every race. You have to have genuine, true diversity. And
you know, it's, Michelle, just to go back to it, it's a reflection of your own personal life, right? My life is filled with people that are colorful. And, you know, like, you know, Deepika, like, and I've known you for such a long time now. And, you know, Bradman, just to see you, I just want you to know this, you know, the freedom that you have, you know, it's so inspiring. Your existence is going to free someone who felt othered. So know that. And so, like, I'm very grateful that you exist.
Me too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, stop. Probably don't even. It's too early. Oh my God, thank you guys. Thank you so much. And just to like emphasize what Deepika was saying, thank you Pablo for putting people that look like me in your clothes, and thank you Michelle for putting people that look like me in your magazine. And Deepika, you know how I feel about you, girl. I live for you, and I just love that I'm surrounded by people who not just talk the talk but walk the walk.
You guys, I love all the mutual love. It's so nice. But Deepika, Prabal, Bretman, I just want to thank you guys all so much for being here. You all inspire all of us so much, and I know you all inspire me. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much.
Aloha.
All of our panelists. For our next session, I'm handing it over to Hudson Yang to introduce our Youth Voices panel.
Hi everyone, I'm Hudson Yang, and I'm the star of ABC's Fresh Off the Boat, and I've been involved with Active Change for quite some time now. And I am proud to be a member of the organization's advisory council, and I'm also excited to be today's host for this panel, Youth, the Power of Youth, Young Voices, and Platforms. Our panelists today are inspiring so many others in some cases, using their literal voices to increase representation and decrease the racial tropes and stereotypes in our communities. So without further ado, joining us today are 3 incredible young women, Mamona Tamada, Leela Ladnier, and Jasmine Shao. I hope I didn't mess up those names. Please tell me if I did. Mona plays Claudia Kishi in the hit Netflix series The Babysitter's Club, and she also portrays the young version of the main character Lara Jean in the Netflix film trilogy To All the Boys I've Loved Before. 2 great shows. Not gonna lie, I love them. Leela is the voice of Disney's first South Asian lead TV character in Disney Junior's Mira the Royal Detective. The show follows a brave and resourceful Mira, a commoner, who was appointed to the role of royal detective by the Queen in the fictional land of, how do I say that?
Jaipur.
Jaipur, all right. And Jasmine is a UCLA student who provides advice to her 731,000 YouTube subscribers on her channel Study Quill, which is all about portraying studying as an enjoyable task. I know what it's like having a lot of pressure and to hold this massive responsibility of racial representation and carefully walk this tightrope of not leaning into these racial stereotypes, but also embracing the authentic parts of our culture, you know? So I wanted to ask you a few questions about that. I'm gonna start with you, Mamona. So Claudia Kishi is a beloved character for so many Asian American girls, and me. For many, it was the first time they saw representation in the novels they read while growing up. In fact, I think there's like a whole documentary on Netflix about the impact of the character on Asian American authors. So first, how does it feel like to bring this cherished character with so many years of history to screen? And how does that play into your feelings about representing Asian Americans as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an honor to bring Claudia to screen. She is like such a beloved character, like you said. And, you know, I think she's grown with so many different generations. So having this opportunity was just this huge step for me. I love how she's just such a bold character who breaks just so many different stereotypes. And I think she's such a great representation for like young Asian American girls or just girls all around the world. And boys, actually. And I think she's really inspiring lots and just so many just people and like really giving them, sorry, how do I put this? She's like just so unapologetically herself. So I think that's such a great inspiration for so many people around the world.
All right, I'm going to Leela. As a fellow Disney member, I wanted to ask you how Disney briefed you about Mira, because, you know, South Asians have historically been represented in a very certain way in our media, and the stereotypes surrounding them seem to be like, they're like the punchline of a joke for many years. So how did they like kind of pitch that series to you, and like, what are they doing to ensure that Mira is represented authentically? It's really important nowadays. I mean, I guess similar to Mamona, but maybe in the opposite direction, what does it mean for you to be the voice of a character that so many young kids look up to and are expecting so much of?
Obviously, compared to my mom's generation, I grew up with a lot more representation, but it was baby steps towards, I think, a show like Mira. But I can maybe count on one hand how many shows I would show my kids that weren't offensive or stereotypical in any way. And so that's why I'm so proud to be a part of Mira, because I see firsthand how hard everyone works to create this just culmination of so many years of, you know, people deserving a show like this. And it's so rewarding. And so the fact that kids are going to get to watch the show and see a character like Mira, who, like Mamona said, is so unapologetically herself and is so driven to chase her own goals and solve problems for herself and not look to other people to solve them for her. Hopefully kids can look up to that. And I'm just so honored to be a part of that.
Sorry. Jasmine, I was talking with the prevailing sentiment that Asians are very studious due to the model minority myth, which, you know, is great, but also really sucks. What I love about what you've done is that you've kind of realized that it's something you're good at and made it like accessible to all, and you've kind of monetized it. You've taken advantage of it. So for so many out there, including myself, again, studying just seems like a chore. It's boring, and you've made it enjoyable, which is really awesome. So what do you say to folks who don't know what you do and think you're just kind of playing into the stereotype of, you know, model minority, Asians are good at math, whatever, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd ask anybody who has that response is like, why do you think that? What stereotypes do you hold? I don't want to be too aggressive about that, but it's really something everyone needs to look within themselves and challenge. And secondly, I guess with stereotypes, there also comes this pressure for outstanding young Asians like ourselves to try to break them. And that's a huge responsibility to hold. And it's really not fair to push that on every individual. Like Mamona and Leela, you guys do great work in, you know, breaking the stereotypes that currently exist about Asian Americans. But again, it's not our jobs to do that in every aspect of our lives. And we should allow ourselves to also just embrace the things that are stereotypically Asian, like being good at school. I love school and I'm not afraid to say it. And, you know, to my fellow young Asian Americans, don't be scared of things that are stereotypically Asian. I know that at my very Asian San Francisco Bay Area high school, there's sometimes a pressure to be less Asian for college apps, to not seem like a stereotype, but you can still love the things that are stereotypically Asian. It's all about the freedom to choose, not necessarily to just pick the thing that is least stereotypical.
Yeah, when I was writing my college applications, I definitely leaned really heavily into the fact that I'm Asian American, because you know what? It's a really awesome and great part of ourselves that we should definitely be leaning into, because it's important. My question for you though, on top of that, is what made you do, like, when did you realize that you wanted to like make this YouTube channel? You wanted to start teaching others how to study and whatnot. Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, honestly, I've always just been a massive nerd. I don't know what it is about it. I love schoolwork. I'm going to be honest. I love learning. I love writing neatly. And I discovered the online community centered around this, which felt really motivating. It was a lot of young Asian American women who really drove the platform anyways, and I felt like I found a group that I really fit into. And then I just got really bored one day and decided I would make videos. Just decided I wanted to be creative like that.
Nice, and you've helped millions with that, I'm sure. And also on the note of writing neatly, I can't do that. I hope you have a lesson on that too, because
I do actually.
Okay, I'll make sure to watch it. Because my writing is like doctor's writing, where it's basically chicken scratch. So yeah. Anyways, yeah. Final question. So there's a lot of pressure on us when we're so young, not that young, but young enough to do so well in school, so that it will set us up for success in the future. Going to college and getting a job. Now, on top of that, with the pandemic, rise in API hate crimes and bullying in API youth communities, the pressure feels even more intense. So Act to Change released an Asian American Youth Bullying Report in partnership with, I don't know how to say this, and Mercia and NextShark this year. The report stated that 80% of Asian American youth reported experienced bullying. 70% of the youth also experienced or saw an increase in cyberbullying in 2020. It sucks. I mean, these statistics are shocking and horrifying and unfortunate. And, I'm not surprised given what I'm seeing online as well. So what are you guys doing to take care of your mental health? And what advice could you guys give to others on, exactly that? Let's start with you this time, Jasmine.
Yeah, sure. But I guess the one thing I want to encourage is that getting professional mental health help is nothing to be ashamed of. There's definitely a stigma for that amongst many Asian Americans. But again, it's completely normal. And, it's also very safe and confidential in the US compared to some countries where our parents might come from. And it's like getting help for a physical injury too. There's no shame in getting surgery for a broken foot. So getting a healthcare professional to take care of your brain is also completely normal and good.
Respect. All right. Who's next?
I just think I have a different perspective on that. If you really don't feel like you have access to that kind of professional help, something that I've found just from the beginning, something that I was just really drawn to was the idea of creating your own self-therapy through artistic expression or creative expression. So some people say go take a walk, go draw, but really I found that just writing down my thoughts, or in quarantine I got really serious about guitar playing and songwriting and just finding different ways to let whatever craziness I have going up here manifest itself into more productive or useful things that I could actually understand rather than just letting it all build up. It's really important. I know so many kids in the South Asian community and Asian community feel trapped and feel like sometimes they might not have someone that can relate to them to talk to. So I think it's important that you feel comfortable enough with yourself to create your own kind of bubble and your own little world that you can go to whenever you feel trapped or misunderstood.
So well, thank you guys so much for being here today and sharing your stories with these fellow young people watching this panel, and for showing everyone that we can all do our part in speaking out against racism as well as living out our dreams. I mean, I guess we're all kind of doing that. So for more Asian American youth bullying stats like the ones I mentioned earlier, check out the URL on the ticker below. And thank you to Act to Change, Admirasia, and NextShark for leveraging data to help fight bullying within the community. And again, for the last time, thank you guys so much for being here. You guys are all super awesome. Yeah, unashamed to be yourselves, and I love it so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
These young people are definitely living out their dreams, but they're also taking action and they're speaking up, which is just so amazing to watch. A super shout out to Hudson, who's been leading a lot of our youth conversations, including at our annual Youth Summit, which happens each October during National Bullying Prevention Month. If you haven't already, please consider making a donation to Act to Change to support our many youth initiatives. Next up, I'm passing it over to Sarah Ha.
Thank you, Malik. I'm honored to be moderating this panel and to serve as an advisory council member for Act to Change. Today, we'll be focusing on enhancing education from an activist perspective. The reality is that in far too many of our communities, many of our educators are left without resources and guidance in teaching about the experiences, history, and power of the API and other marginalized communities. While we demand inclusion in our school curriculums nationwide, what other tools can we use at our immediate disposal to help educate our youth? Joining me today are 4 API activists who have effectively used their platform to make strides in this space, and I'm excited to see what's in store for them. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Jose Antonio Vargas, Shital Sheth, Liz Kleinrock, and Havani Rios. Welcome, everyone. Jose, I'd love to start with you. Thanks again for joining us today. I feel more than any of us, you know firsthand the power of storytelling to not just change our hearts and minds, but also drive advocacy and action. While anti-Asian hate isn't anything new, we're in a unique moment where after years of feeling invisible or erased, for better or worse, many Asian Americans now feel a sense of hypervisibility, particularly with all the coverage and conversation now of public anti-Asian attacks. What do you think caused this shift in national attention, and how do you see it supporting advocacy and reform in our education system?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's really great to be amongst all of you. And I'm just sad that I have to answer that question in this way, which is that the reality is, I'm here in the Bay Area where the attacks have been really nonstop, right? You've heard about elderly Asian women. You've heard about so many people, so many Asian people from different ethnicities and different age groups just really being attacked. I mean, a few weeks ago, I remember there was an Instagram post that said, "Slap an Asian if you're on BART," which is like our transportation system here in the Bay, here in the East Bay. And my nephews and nieces, all of whom were late teens, early 20s, started texting the group texts. And one of my nephews was like, "I'm gonna slap back." And that's when I started getting really nervous about what this could really look like, right? And really nervous about the safety of not just my nieces and nephews, but my grandma, my Lola, which is grandma in Tagalog, and my aunties and my titas and my titos and everybody. So I think the level of violence that we're seeing, and in some ways, a friend of mine just reminded me that they've actually always been there. The difference, of course, is now video is catching them, right? And so how can we use this moment to not just address stop hating Asians, stop Asian hate, which has been kind of a dominant hashtag, and actually just talk about the context and the history behind all of this, right? And then how do we get to this question of we have always belonged in this country, right? And for me, I have to say the last thing the point that I want to say is, from as far as I can remember, and I've been in this country since '93, I don't remember this kind of pan-Asian moment ever really happening, where I feel like it doesn't matter if the people who are being attacked are, Indian, Vietnamese, Filipino, Chinese, Korean. For the first time, I feel like there's this identification of, that's my aunt, that could be my grandma, that could be my mom. And I think that's a really powerful sense of community.
Havane, I'd love to pivot to you. Thank you so much for joining us today as well. I'd love to ask you for your thoughts on how to drive change in our education system as well. Your advocacy work for the Protect Mauna Kea movement and your life work as a musician is so beautifully connected with one another and grounded in knowledge of what our ancestors have survived. Can you speak a little bit about your connection to your community and why it's so important to know our history as marginalized people who stand in solidarity?
Velina Mai Mekelo Hanui, mahalo for inviting me into this space, and mahalo for these questions. I watched my mom as I grew up in and out of the classroom. She was the Hawaiian Studies teacher at Waimea Middle School. And from when I was small, I had this i'ini, this desire to know about where I come from. And that comes from the way that my mom teaches. It comes from the way that she lives her teachings. And so I watched her speak of our mo'oku au hau our genealogy as a people. And I feel so grateful that that information, that knowledge, that wisdom, that ancestral knowing was saved for us by the ones who came before, because so many people do not know where they come from because that was stolen from them. And so to know where I come from through Mo'oku au Hau, that right there was the pai pai honua of my entire life, the foundation of my existence. And so I thank my mom for teaching me this and teaching so many of our community through this way of art and chant, dance, singing. I learned through these mediums, and I saw all of these kids, you know, going into this program with my mom. I saw them come home to themselves because they knew where they come from through the movement of their body, through chanting, through singing their existence into this space that we are living in, where we are marginalized, we are the minorities in our own home. And so this was empowering, and it still is. And as a resource teacher now, I've followed in my mother's footsteps. And I've gone into many classrooms, and this is the way that I've learned to connect and learn to teach, is by inviting our people to learn through the medium of connection that our ancestors passed down to us. And so I always say, somebody never stopped chanting. Somebody never stopped speaking our language. Somebody never stopped being proud to be Kanaka Oiwi, to be Hawaiian. And all of these things is a part of our legacy as a people. And so one thing that I learned from my mom is she always spoke the truth. She never hid anything from her students. There's so many things happening out in Hawaii, so many issues. We have an issue for every second of the day. And now with social media, now with the amount of information that is on this platform, our students, our kids are seeing what's happening. And so we cannot hide from them. And so what I do, especially when I'm talking about Mauna Kea, is I don't hide what's happening on the front line. I don't hide what's happening in the contested cases. They have a right to know and a right to make their own decisions about how they feel about what is happening to our homelands. And so grounding the space in, you know, very simple things like, what is the name of your mountain? What is the name of your river? What is the name of your parents, your grandparents? Do you know the genealogy that you have to your homeland? These are the very foundational practices that we use in the classroom so that they will care and continue to care about where they come from and their kuleana to land and to space and place. And so, yeah, that is what we do here in Hawaii Island and with the Mauna Kea Education and Awareness Hui. And I'm so happy to share some of that with all of you. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo, Lavane. Thank you so much for the incredible ways that you continue to speak truth to power, be a model for our youth. As you were speaking, it was just also making me think about this quote that when one must speak, silence when one must speak is the slow death of freedom. We all want our children and all of our relatives to be free. So many thanks to you. Liz, I've been a huge fan of your work. I follow you on Insta at Teach and Transform. Your workshop on navigating difficult conversations as part of one of Act to Change's classroom combos last year was so powerful. We're really grateful to have you back with us again today. We've heard from many API parents who have realized just how much they weren't taught about their own histories and are trying to make sure their children in the next generation don't have the same experience. What are some tools you think parents can use to teach their kids, and perhaps even more importantly, their friends about API history? In that same vein, how can we encourage kids to be accomplices or co-conspirators in promoting equity for marginalized communities as opposed to mere allyship?
Thank you so much for the question, Sarah, and thank you, Act to Change, for having me back. It's been such a great opportunity to be able to connect with so many other Asian American Pacific Islander educators and activists in this space. I feel like there's a lot of layers to that, but also wanting to just be like mindful of the space that I'm taking up with all these other incredible folks. I feel like I can break it down into like strategies and also resources that are available. Because I feel like on one hand, when information is new to us, we kind of have a tendency to want to reinvent the wheel. But there's a lot of information that's out there, but oftentimes it's really hard to locate it or figure out where to look or try to compile like the best of resources that currently exist. So like on a very practical hand, there are a couple of organizations such as Learning for Justice and Embrace Race that offer like really practical tools, like sentence starters and questions you can use to engage with students and especially with young kids. So like that information is already out there, which is really beautiful. I think like from the perspective of as an Asian American who knew pretty much nothing about her history, especially being a transracial adoptee, like being born in South Korea, but being raised in a white family here in the States, I feel like I experienced erasure on like multiple levels. And even like despite, you know, as a product of the US education system, I can think of maybe like the two things I ever learned about anyone Asian in my classroom, which were, you know, learning about how Chinese immigrants like helped build the railroads and that Japanese Americans were put into camps during World War II. And like, that's where it began and ended. So I feel like a lot of the education that I've had to do, and I've heard from other Asian American and Pacific Islander educators and colleagues, is first like having to sit with and deal with some of the rage and anger and loss that we have been robbed of our own history in the spaces that are supposed to be ours. And I know that for a lot of educators out there and parents, you kind of feel the need to become an expert in a particular subject or topic before you have the comfort level of interacting with kids and talking about certain issues. But I also feel like on the other hand, it's too urgent, and that can also take forever. Like you can sit in the intellectualization realm for a very, very long time. So the way that I can think about it with my students is if there is something that I don't know about, but I do believe it's important for them to engage in, how can I look at this instead as a joint opportunity for us to learn together? That when we think about collaboration, we often think of it as adult with adult instead of having partnership and collaboration between adult and young people. I think like the number one question that I will ask my students around any topic is just, what do you think you know? And what are you curious about? And once we have those questions out, our questions might actually be really aligned with each other. How can we then try to identify resources and figure out ways where we can co-construct our knowledge and understanding together? So I think one really practical tool for parents and caregivers and educators is just to get really comfortable with saying, I don't know, when a young person asks you a question, and how can we figure out that answer together? I would also say that it's so important to make sure that we're also balancing both like the positive and negative sides of history, because the examples that I gave of what I learned in school about Asian American history were such from a deficit lens, just like people don't want to be defined by the worst things that have been done to them. There were no examples of like power or joy or resilience or culture or anything. All of that was erased. So while it is super important for us to know our history, and that does include history of racism that we have experienced, of marginalization and oppression and injustice, how can we also elevate stories of who we are and how we want people to define us instead? And to the second question around how do we have kids learn to go from being allies to being more active accomplices or co-conspirators, is thinking about how we can model this practice for ourselves and for our students. Like, how are we actually living these values in a way that our children and our students can see the behavior, see the type of language that we want them to display and demonstrate as well. And to think about different situations that we could present to students, how they have felt in particular situations. When have there been times when people have spoken up for them? When have there been times when people have ignored pain or hardship that they've gone through? To really remind ourselves that we have to be rooted in relationships and empathy and community for any of this to really matter.
Thank you so much, Liz, for the continued wisdom that you drop in this community and the tangible actions as well as resources that you shared in your response. Sheetal, your first book always Anjali was one of the first of its kind, a picture book that addressed a problem many API kids have encountered, feeling different because they don't have a traditionally white American name. You also were given advice to change your name when you started acting, which I'm sure was a very difficult decision because of what was traditionally thought about media at the time. For many API parents reading your book, it felt like this was the first time someone acknowledged the situation. Can you tell us how the book came about and what the reaction was from Asian and non-Asian folks?
Thank you, everybody. It's so nice to be in this space with everybody and listening to everyone speak. There's so much that resonates with me and actually with your question. And that the books came from, I've been an actress for over 20 years. I love telling stories. I think of myself as a storyteller. I've worked extensively with kids through my whole life. And I was pregnant with my first daughter at the time, and I was looking for books like most parents. And what I found was very much what I found in most of media as an actress and things I saw out there. And it was obviously very white. And if there was something that had to do with brown people, especially specifically South Asian, it was either culturally insensitive or culturally inaccurate. And I found that most of the stories centered around narratives that were kind of extraordinary events. Like you would just see books about us having Diwali and Holi and Ramadan. Like there was nothing else. And it made me crazy because I felt like we have dinner with our parents, we have pets, we play sports, we do all the things all the other kids do, but we're not allowed to have books about just being kids and the narrative not centered around race. And so I, was like, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just going to do something about it. And, I started writing, and always Anjali was inspired by kind of my childhood and actually, unfortunately, my adulthood, and so many stories that I have heard and what I have experienced. I have lost jobs because I refused to change my name. There are several instances, maybe one day I'll talk about that. That'll be in the book one day, about some major movies. And this was ages ago, but still, that told me if I didn't change my name, I couldn't get the job. And it alarmed me how many times that came up and continued to come up. And I thought, my God, if that's happening to me, what is happening to our children? And I just thought we need to teach kids that they're perfect exactly the way they are. And by the way, our names are given to us for a reason, and we are born into them as much as we create who we are through them. And it's something to be celebrated. And I just always felt like to erase that part of yourself to, quote, fit in made me really sad. And something that, I experienced even when I was creating this book and shopping it. It's interesting because I deliberately wanted it to be about, a brown girl, clearly, but living life. So many publishers would be like, not Indian enough. And I would say, what does that mean to you? What is that like? And again, it comes to this idea of the narratives. I still think, when you see in media, when it comes to South Asian representation, which a lot of people don't even realize is Asian. There's another conversation. We get a few stories. We get arranged marriage, we get terrorism, we get mythology, we get religion. If we're lucky, we get, some token, side character. But those are the stories that people see us as. And so when they say it's not Indian enough, it's because I haven't fulfilled one of those boxes. And my point is, I don't think we're ever going to feel like we're part of the kind of majority community if we're not able to tell stories about the mundane as we do as much about the extraordinary.
Thank you all so much for the gift of your wisdom. I really appreciate you joining us today for this powerhouse panel discussion. I'm so grateful to share space with all of you and have your support in helping Act to Change commemorate May 18th. Thank you so much, and looking forward to staying connected.
Hi, everybody. I am so excited about this panel on comedy, how we can tackle racism with laughter. Now, in addition to AAPI Heritage and History Month, May is also National Mental Health Awareness Month. And after the difficult year we've all had and the collective trauma that we've all endured, it has been so important to come together and have people like our panelists who use comedy to take on challenging issues. So please join me in welcoming Aparna Nancherla, Hari Kondabolu, and Bowen Yang. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
I want to get into some more specifics with each of you. So, Bowen, you're killing it on SNL. It seems like every sketch you're a part of goes viral. But I want to talk to you particularly about the Weekend Update sketch that you did as Asian cast member Bowen Yang. You so poignantly asked people to do more, and you encouraged Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders to fuel up. So I guess my question to you is, did you feel pressure as the Asian American cast member to create this segment? What was the process for you getting it on air? Why was it important for you to do this segment?
It's funny that the whole hi. The whole the whole process for that was very textured, I guess. Or it was just I remember going into that week, we had just come off a break from the show, and I think the Atlanta shootings had just happened maybe the week before or 2 weeks before the first show back, and it felt like there was this invisible hand that was like trying to like see if I could like wring any sort of comedy out of, again, like a really just a dark situation. And I think I kind of pretty early on into the piece kind of point that out, that it's hard to make light of anything with something that's just so bleak. And I don't know, I remember going to the week feeling like I just trying to recuse myself from any like comment on it. But then of course you just kind of like, it's never linear in that way when you think about these things. I think Aparna and Harry can agree, because one of our new writers, Celestine, who's East Asian, they kind of approached me, and we were batting around ideas that had nothing to do with anything racial, much less just about what had happened. And I mean, we just kind of we told ourselves, you know what, if we're not going to write this, then who will at the show? And the show has this tradition of just kind of confronting really tragic events. And you know, there was just a lot of, we were trying to sort of weave in a lot of different threads. So yeah, I mean, coming in with the Chiron of Bowen Yang, Asian cast member, and then immediately giving the audience some permission to laugh by like making it a joke that I set up Colin. It was just kind of like, that was kind of the thing that like was hopefully the entry point into something that was mostly, I mean, Harry just said the best comedy isn't preachy. Like, I couldn't help but be a little preachy towards the end, but that's kind of like the structural thing that I think we're all familiar with, right? Is that like, you front load it with jokes, and then towards the end you get a little strident. And I think that's something that everyone at the show recognizes, and that's what we did, hopefully.
I mean, speaking of discomfort, Hari, your documentary, The Problem with Apu, which I was very lucky to be a part of, tackled how Apu on The Simpsons perpetuates racist South Asian stereotypes and was problematic in its casting. Hank Azaria recently apologized for playing Apu for decades and said, "I wish I could apologize personally to every South Asian person out there." What did you think of that?
He doesn't need to do that. I don't think that's the most productive use of his time. But I do appreciate the fact that he publicly stated that he learned something, and that maybe the choices that he made weren't things he would do now. And he understands that this thing he created without any ill intention actually became a tool for bullies, in addition to kind of minimizing our existence and our parents' existence in this country. And I don't think obviously that was his intention. So I think it's really great that he actually put that out there and basically gave an example to people that you're allowed to make mistakes, and you're allowed to apologize for them, and you're allowed to grow from them. And that's in fact human. Like, you don't need to double down constantly. I will say one thing. Often when he talks about it, and he talks about the journey he went on to learn what he learned, he doesn't really mention the documentary or me, which, you know, on one level, as a comedian with an ego, obviously is annoying. But the thing that I think annoys me the most about that, and again, I think it's great that he's learned something and that he's put it out there. It took 8 years. since the first time I introduced this, and he saw it on Kamau Bell's old show, Totally Biased. And that journey that he went on required me and other people of color to get him there. And I think that's important because any marginalized person, they don't just get their rights and get their dignity. They have to fight for it constantly and earn it. It's not that straight people or white people or cis people or men just magically one day figure it out. Like everything I've learned, for example, about sexism comes from women who had to be vulnerable and had to like tell me what I was doing wrong because they saw that there was a possibility there that I might grow. And that required lots of work. So I think it's important to acknowledge the labor of marginalized people who like fight for themselves and fight for their communities. So yeah, I think again, it's important that he acknowledged he learned, but just a little PS.
Yeah, that's so incredibly well said. And I want to talk to you about your stand-up, which I know Aparna does as well, but I also want to bring Aparna in just to dovetail on what you're talking about, learning about sexism. Aparna, you have been a writer in some pretty big writing rooms, and I think know that writing rooms have historically been dominated by white men. It's pretty rare to see a South Asian woman's perspective in the writer's room. So what was it like for you writing on Seth Meyers, writing on W. Kamau Bell, and did being a comedian help you navigate real life, potentially challenging situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was lucky in that Totally Biased was my first comedy writing room, and I think it's fair to say it's probably one of the most diverse writing rooms that has probably existed in a late night space, especially. And Seth Meyers as well, I believe they were the first network late night show to hire a Black woman, which was in 2014, which is horrible to think it took that long, but I was lucky in that sense of being in these spaces that were already making efforts to be more inclusive. But I do think as any comedic writer, you have to figure out like how you fit in with just the group. And I think I as also like a quiet person have to like kind of figure out how to get my point of view across. And a lot of that is just based in like finding allies, finding people who like get you. And because I think everyone knows that in a comedy writing room, you're not like an island. Like you sort of have to find people that you work well with and find those people who are kind of going to go to bat for you. So I think it's sort of finding how you best fit into the ecosystem and not necessarily going in and being like, I just have to make.
Oh, I think we might have dropped Aparna, which is so sad.
She was right in the middle. She was right in the pocket. She was right about to.
Did I get cut off?
Yeah. She's back. She's
that
back.
Feels so apropos. Get off the woman.
Okay. Well, so speaking of like you having a voice at the table, I mean, Bowen sort of spoke about this with being the Asian American cast member.
Yeah.
SNL, and Hari's talked about this in terms of like having to do the work to teach other people. But what was important, do you think, for having your perspective in the room? Like, did it actually shift conversations? Did it drive the way things were written?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you, especially in any writing room, you have to sort of like figure out what you're bringing to the, to the stew pot that no one, like what is your unique flavor that you're kind of contributing, for lack of a better metaphor. But I think in that sense, I was sort of like, what can I speak to, especially at Totally Biased. Kamau did a really good job of like letting people speak to issues who were specifically suited for that. Like we had a segment on like a trans story that came out, and we like actually brought on a trans person to speak about it rather than have like one of us try to like capture or understand that experience. So I think in that space especially, he was good at being like, what specifically are you passionate about that you can speak to? And I think it's good to even figure that out in any room you're in. Like, what am I contributing that no one else can kind of maybe see or has experienced?
I want to close out with one just last quick thought from each of you. I think kids often find solace in using comedy as a way to tackle bullying. I'm wondering if that was a part of your narrative growing up at all, and also what you might say to your younger self if your younger self had an opportunity to watch folks like you on a film like this. Aparna, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I came to comedy a little later than most, so I didn't necessarily have that tool belt when I was being bullied, but I was the type of person who kind of studied the class clown rather than being the class clown, so I think I was sort of amassing intel. So for all my quiet folks out there, it is okay to just be taking notes right now. And I think late blooming is where it's at, really, because you got a lot more mileage ahead of you, and whatever, you know, crappy situation you're in right now, I know it's cliche, but it really will improve as you get older. And like what seems daunting right now is definitely just going to be armor for you later in life. And hopefully the internet too has opened up. I know the internet is like good and bad for sure, but at least it does seem like a positive side of it now for the younger generation is just their world being a bit bigger and knowing there are people like them out there that I definitely did not when I was their age.
Thank you. Hari?
You know, as someone who used self-deprecation a lot, you know, when I was being bullied and made fun of for whatever, because of my weight or color or culture and stuff, I usually tried to fight back by making myself the punchline. And by making myself the punchline, I got to ease some of the tension. And I kind of regret it now. I think that did a lot in terms of hurting my own self-esteem. The things I perceived as weaknesses are actually strengths. They're what make me unique. They're what has helped me on this journey. And so, you know, talking to my younger self and whatever young people are watching this, you know, you don't need to harm yourself or other people to get laughs. And that isn't the way to approach it. There's so much in the world that you can make fun of and be funny about, and you don't need to bring yourself down as a way to lift yourself up.
Amazing. Owen?
I kind of relate to what Aparna was saying, where the way I used comedy growing up was not even just to like guard myself against bullying, but it was just to like be able to go into school the next day and like just quote jokes back. Like it was not like original material, but I would just quote stuff, and then that was a way to ingratiate myself with people. And then yeah, of course, like I kind of had this like Rolodex of quips when people would bully me. But then I think over time, like sort of it's the armor. Comedy is the armor, but then over time, especially now, like, you know, I'm hearing a bunch of wild things from all sorts of people. I think we all four of us are. Sometimes it's like, wait, where did this come from? But now when that stuff happens, I'm kind of okay. I kind of don't need to like swipe back because I'm just like, oh wait, like I don't need to. Comedy is no longer the armor. It just becomes like something that's imbued in you, and then you can just sort of unequip whatever sort of thing you're wearing. That metaphor doesn't track at all. I'm so sorry.
I think I understood it. The idea of that, like,
okay. Sure.
Where you don't have to shield yourself. You could just be yourself.
Yeah. There you go.
Listen, you all, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your unique perspectives to all the young people that are watching. And thank you for reminding us that laughter is a useful tool in tackling racism and challenges. And thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Malik. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Speaking of comedy, our next guest is making the whole world laugh playing Mindy Chen on Netflix's Emily in Paris. Please welcome my good friend, Ashley Park.
Ashley! Bonjour!
Yes, from France, yes?
Yes, we just started this week, filming season 2, so very grateful.
Amazing. So let's just dive right in and talk about Emily in Paris. Mindy Chen has become a fan favorite. It's earned you a Critics' Choice nomination, 2 MTV Award nominations. You play this international jet setter. You get to tap into parts of your Asian culture, and you are such a counterpoint to Emily's more white, more American perspective. What was important to you in crafting this character, and how have you wanted Mindy to land on audiences?
About how, of course, important it is for people of color to see themselves represented in a way that they haven't seen before. But especially recently with the attacks against Asians and all this hate that is being so publicized for the first time, really, I realized how important it is for people to see people who don't look like them on screen and represented in a way where they're not others. You know, I think that all of this violence and bullying and everything comes from fear and fear of the unknown and not recognizing something and hating that thing and blaming that thing. And I think that the beautiful thing about playing Mindy Chen was that the thing that a lot of people said to me was like, oh, I feel like she's my best friend. Like I got a new best friend through this. So that's what a best friend looks like. And without even meaning to, I mean, we just found out that it was the most watched comedy, I think, in 2020. So that means like 58 million households within a month saw an Asian girl who was this jet setter, who was this awesome friend and cool person to be around. And hopefully that entering like the zeitgeist of pop culture in a way, I don't know, it's very meaningful to me that people not only saw themselves represented, but have a familiarity with an Asian face now, and with a good connotation.
Something that we asked the other comedians that we had on before was that a lot of kids use comedy as a way to deal with being bullied or to deflect bullying. Was that part of your story as a young person? And what would you say to like if the middle school version of yourself was able to see grown-up Ashley Parks on a panel like this today, what would that middle school version of yourself, what would you say to that middle school version of yourself?
Well, I think that the reason we love comedy and the reason we talked about this backstage, we were like, what makes people laugh in this play? Oh, it's when they recognize something. It's when they see themselves or something that they recognize or they've experienced being experienced by the people that they're watching. And that familiarity is what makes people laugh and watching people deal with that stuff. So I think that comedy is the best way to connect with audiences, like through our stories. And I think for me, I always use, and I've realized this more and more, like I've been very complicit in using humor when I'm uncomfortable, when I am in a situation where I feel bullied or other or marginalized or invaluable. What's the word? Not of value. Yeah, but I humor has been my survival mechanism to make the people around me feel comfortable and make sure I leave a situation unharmed. And so I think it's very powerful in that way. But it also, I think that for the younger version of myself, I would say, and for people who, I mean, it doesn't have to be actors, like people, anybody, like it's the hardest thing to do, but we have to have the utmost respect for ourselves. That does make you a great comedian, because if you have really great respect for yourself, then you're able to make a fool out of yourself and not be so precious and take yourself so seriously. Because as a comedian, you know, too, like you can't do that. You have to be able to laugh at yourself, but it's so hard to fall into the trap of feeling like to make other people laugh with you, you have to allow them to laugh at you. And the only way to genuinely not let that happen is if you like really deeply respect yourself. I'm still working on it every day. I think laughter is power. It really is. Like your ability to laugh and find joy in things is absolute power. And I think that our ability to make other people laugh is power too, because that means that we've connected, you know, and especially for young people, anybody who feels bullied or anything, when people are laughing at you, I would say always like look at what the root of that laughter is, and to again just I don't know, just to have like strength and power in yourself.
I love that. Ashley, I know so many young people look up to you. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you so much for sharing all of that great stuff about comedy. And congratulations on all the success of Emily.
Yay! Thank you.
It was so fun to chat with Ashley and the comedy crew. Stay tuned because coming up we have Simu Liu, Randall Park, Olivia Munn, Tan France, so many great speakers coming up. Also, if you're enjoying these panels, we will share information with you shortly on how to watch the full unedited versions. I also want to share with you all that while we have been on these panels, the COVID-19 hate crimes bill to address the rise in anti-Asian hate just passed the US House of Representatives minutes ago and should be signed by President Biden very soon. Although we acknowledge that there is so much more that we must do to achieve systemic change, this bill is a positive step forward in requiring state and local law enforcement agencies to establish online reporting, accessible in multiple AAPI languages, and to take affirmative steps to expand culturally competent public education. Act to Change joined with 157 civil and human rights organizations in support of this bill, but we do know that the work is far from over, and we are committed as an organization to continue to do the work on the ground to create systemic change. In our increasingly connected world, we are seeing so many creative ways that people are leveraging their platforms to make their voices heard. We want to recognize our platinum sponsor, TikTok, today. TikTok is sponsoring our next panel featuring entrepreneurs and creators.
Anime
and K-pop.
You know gua sha and fa.
You know hula
and henna. But imagine if there was no us. The world as we know it would be different.
And the culture as we know it would not exist.
From the east to the southeast. From the south to the west.
From the Pacific to the islands.
Our roots represent many.
Our names carry history.
We are API.
We invite you to show up, join us,
know us.
Hey everybody, it's Liza Koshy here. Happy to be here with Act to Change. National AAPI Day Against Bullying and Hate, as we know, as every day should be. As a South Asian kid, I was bullied all the time. I didn't realize it was bullying though, I thought it was bonding. We bury those jokes from our peers so deep. I have a much better, stronger, healthier community around me now than ever before. It's a process of learning and unlearning and learning and loving and leading and then standing up or kneeling down or marching all over town for what is right. And what's right is to unite because together we are so much stronger. Now, I know we all know that. However, we have to show that. See, the way this country is set up, it is our job to learn the history of our country and take time to understand the history and hardships that Asian Americans have been through here. It's all that to say, if we educate ourselves, we can empower each other and celebrate. So united we stand, we kneel, we march for each other and celebrate one another today on the National AAPI Day Against Bullying and Hate.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rue Bott, one of the board members at Act to Change. During the day, I'm a partner in the associate practice group at the world's largest and the nation's top-ranked legal search firm, Major Lindsay in Africa. By night, I'm a DJ and co-founder of Occupy the Disco, a trio of DJs that produce events in New York and frequently spin at venues all around the country, which we're hoping to get back to soon. In both capacities, a business-oriented mindset was necessary to gain success. With that in mind, I'm really excited about today's panel focusing on entrepreneurship. Each of our panelists today saw a need in the market for something that spoke to them and their Asian identity and leveraged social media, primarily TikTok, to launch those businesses into the stratosphere. So without further ado, joining me today is Tiffany Chen, Nick Cho, Sarah Lee, Christine Chang, and David E. Hey guys. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining me. So Tiffany Chen is a food content creator who shares some of the most delicious Asian recipes, and they're super easy to follow. I'm always nervous about cooking, but Tiffy certainly makes it easy and takes the pressure off. Next up is Nick Cho, who's the real-life father behind the viral Your Korean Dad TikTok account, and also the co-founder and co-CEO and head barista of Wrecking Ball Coffee Roasters. His videos warm everyone's hearts while also subverting stereotypes. We also have Sarah Lee and Christine Chang, the co-founders and co-CEOs of Glow Recipe, a cruelty-free, clean, fruit-powered skincare brand. And lastly, we have David E., co-founder of Very Good Light, the ultimate men's grooming destination for Gen Z and young millennials. He's also the author of the book, Pretty Boys. Thank you all for joining me today. So I want to jump right into it. We all know that this past year has been incredibly hard for the community due to the pandemic and also the rise in anti-Asian hate. As entrepreneurs, what has been the most challenging part about ensuring that your business continues thriving? David, I'll start with you.
I think that, at the core and the soul of who I am, I have always been an activist and an advocate. I grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado as the lone Asian American in school. So I was always otherized. I felt like a social pariah, and I was always meant to feel low about myself. But I took that and I advocated in my school. I started the first International Diversity Council, all about intersectionality and understanding that we all have a voice and that we're all powerful. And I started a first talent show in my school. And I really wanted that talent show to activate people to understand why diversity, equity, and inclusion is the only way through. And that advocacy led me to become a journalist and a founder of a brand and a beauty brand that cares so much about all of us, cares so much about bringing all of us into the conversation and understanding that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and we're all that beholder. As an Asian American today, an Asian American founder, I really find strength in my younger self. I find strength in the AAPI community, and I feel strength knowing that we're Slaysian. We are here to slay. We are here to be Slaysians all day. And that to me gives me power to know that my ancestors have come before me and that we're in this group together and we will rise together.
I love that so much. Thank you. Tiffany, what about you?
Yeah, growing up as like a first generation immigrant from Taiwan, I think with my channel, not only am I sharing recipes, I'm sharing even the stories and histories behind it. I think a lot of people, when they say about food blogging, they're like, why is there so much information before the recipe? And that's because every dish is not just about what this tastes like. It's about, my story behind it, my grandma's story behind it, my mom's story behind it.
That's really great. I love that. Sarah, how about you?
So Christine and I started Glow Recipe to start something that we were both so passionate about, coming from our upbringing and our roots and our heritage, which is Korean skincare. And we wanted to share what we've learned from our mothers and grandmothers growing up. And it's something that we were so passionate about, and we're so grateful that we can actually be true to ourselves, our authentic selves, really kind of bring back our heritage to what we do every single day, which is running our business. And when the news started, showing all these violent crimes against Asians, it was obviously extremely upsetting for us, but also personally. And so we were just really inspired by our other Asian American peers speaking out and using their platforms to shed light on these acts while sharing their personal experiences. So we wanted to do the same. We wanted to talk to our team openly about these issues going on in the world while leveraging our platform. I think the great thing about having a platform is that you're able to speak out about these issues transparently and openly with your community. Even though it's not just about beauty products, right? Sometimes we don't always want to see things on social media about products, especially when these things are happening in the world and it's just top of mind for everybody. So we kind of really tuned into what everyone was thinking about, checked in on each other, but we're also partnering with Act to Change, and we're really honored to sponsor the 3rd annual Asian American and Pacific Islander Day Against Bullying and Hate in May this month. And we're also doing a really fun day of events talking about our heritage and all of the things that we were inspired by growing up. So this is just small steps that we're taking as a brand, but we would love to do more with an organization like Act to Change.
And we thank you for that support. Christine, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, and you mentioned the pandemic, Rue, and for us, Glow Recipe is about sharing our heritage and the Korean beauty approach that we grew up with every day. And even during the pandemic and during what's been a really challenging time for so many people, we were able to deep dive into creating content around self-care and wellness, drawing on a lot of the approaches that we grew up with in Korea, learned from our mothers and grandmothers. And it's really interesting to us that this became another resource for us and a resource for our communities.
Thank you. Hey, Nick, how about you?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, in many ways, I suppose, ironically, what's been the most challenging for my business is similar to what I found most challenging about the Asian Pacific Islander American Collective. You know, we're all in this together and we're all different in dealing with our own issues. So like my coffee company, Wrecking Ball Coffee Roasters here in San Francisco, for the parts of our business that are on our own like domain, we've done okay through the pandemic. We've had some figuring out to do and a lot of work to put in, but we've maintained our business levels this whole time and we've been very fortunate. But we also have other folks we work with, cafes, markets, restaurants that we supply to, you know, suppliers for our production, like raw coffee producers, even the people who make our packaging. Everyone's had a different story over the past year. And I guess to answer your question about the most challenging part is that what does it mean if we're doing okay if our supplier is not, or if someone in our neighborhood is not one of our customers is struggling? What can we do? Or more specifically, like what can we do to sacrifice in order to actually support others in our community, not just enjoy the upside when it feels good? So it's been what's challenging most for me, and it's one of the most challenging issues within the API American Collective.
You know, that's true. I think that we're all learning so much about how to support the community at large. You know, over the events of the last year, that was something that we all strive for before that, but over the last year and a half, it's really become so incredibly important that we really need to stand in solidarity with everyone, right? I do want to get to our last question. Sarah, I'll start with you. If you wanted to give advice to a young AAPI youth, you know, who has an idea and wants to turn it into a business, and maybe it comes from their heritage or not, like what advice would you give our young viewers that are watching today?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm really personally very passionate about mentoring as well. And this is something that I always say to anyone that just aspires to be an entrepreneur is to dream big. And it's what we hear all the time, but I think there are steps to get to your dream, right? Create your vision board. I think it's actually really important that you write out what you want to achieve. And also think about what you're good at and what you truly enjoy doing, what you're passionate about, and find that balance, right? And if you find that middle ground where you know that you can really leverage your talent as well as enjoy that process, then I think you have a sweet spot. So start there and dream big and take steps to get closer to your goal.
Yeah, I think the cool thing is you can also use social media now to achieve those dreams, right? Which is something
exactly. You don't need big ad budgets anymore.
Yeah, I think that's really rad. Nick, I'm going to ask you the same question. Any advice for our youth?
Yeah, any advice? You know, I've been running coffee businesses for 20 years. I guess like my biggest piece of advice is sort of a little bit practical, which is, you know, starting your own business, it can be really great. I've been so inspired by so many young people who've done just that. But my advice is this. When you start your own business, you know, you wear multiple hats, right? You work multiple jobs like manager, bookkeeper, janitor, HR department, like stuff like that. So for each of these job roles, like periodically, I think you should ask yourself, like, would you hire yourself for that job? Because for some things, the answer will be yes. And for some, it's going to be no. And the thing is, when you choose your own, like when you run your own business, you don't always get to choose like which jobs you do, at least like not when you're starting out. But it's important to take note, like do your best with the jobs you're not well suited for, but make good choices accordingly, right? So get outside help for what you need. Oh my God, getting help is a whole different issue, right? But you know, you should really delegate or get support for those jobs you're not actually good at. Otherwise, your whole business can actually come crumbling down because you were in denial about what you can handle or not handle. Trust me.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes we feel like we can just do everything, and that's definitely not the case. David, I'm going to ask you the same question. Any advice for our youth?
Yeah, I would say that start with what you're passionate about, then do what you're good at. And then I would challenge you to find that greater good. What are you doing? What are you passionate about? And how are you going to help others? What are you going to do to really propel culture forward? I say that all the time, but once you align with what you're good at, with your passion about, with that higher calling and purpose, you'll be unstoppable. No one will be able to stop you. No one will be able to get in your tracks. the universe will unfold in more ways than you know. So just align yourself, do some self-searching, some self-actualization, some self-love practices, and come to terms with who you are. And I think that when you do identify those three and genuinely and authentically go for it, you're going to really change the world.
That's so inspiring. So inspiring. Tiffy, how about you?
Yeah, I think just staying passionate and, being patient. I'm a strong believer is that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. It took me 10 years to get to kind of like my food blogging journey. I just started. However, I never once felt like my journey at my corporate 9 to 5 was a waste of time. I learned so much. Every day, you're learning something, regardless, like if you don't think you are, you're learning something. And I think it's just, stay passionate, be patient, your time will come, and don't ever feel the need to rush anything. I know right now, especially right now, everyone's so excited for so many different opportunities, but don't feel the need that, you're not at the right pace. It's a marathon, it's not a race. Take your time and just believe in yourself.
And how about you, Christine?
I would say that you can find meaning, not just in where you want to go or what you want to achieve as an entrepreneur, but how you get there. And building a business will really give you a platform to do things that have deeper meaning to you and to make differences in surprising ways. So for example, at Glow, we've really been able to take strides in skin positivity and neutrality and conversations around that, and inclusion to include all types of skin tones and types and even textures without retouching on our social media, and opening up the discussion around this. And we have found this incredibly, incredibly rewarding because our community has responded in such a tremendous way. And I think it's become just as big a part of our business as or our company mission as, amazing products or educating around self-care.
Thank you so much. And I want to give a big thank you to our entire panel today. I mean, it has been such a pleasure moderating this panel. You are paving the way for AAPI entrepreneurs and highlighting that with grit, thoughtfulness, and leaps of faith, really anything is possible. I really hope everyone watching today, you truly follow all these people on TikTok. There's so much good stuff that's out there. And thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bing Chen, and I'm president of Goldhouse and beyond proud advisory council member at Act to Change. If you think about the genesis of superheroes of our past, whether it's Captain America or Wonder Woman or my personal favorite, the X-Men, they were all born at a time when America needed heroes to instill hope, justice, and fairness, especially for those of us who may not have seen them on the big screen. Americans and really people around the world were dreaming of a better future as our country dealt with world wars, Great Depressions, and fights for civil rights. Today, with the rise of anti-API sentiment and general xenophobia, it's clear that hope and justice are still necessary. So it's obvious why we love our superhero movies. It's why today's panel of not only film and TV superheroes, but real life superheroes is so important. And so with that, I'd like to welcome our esteemed panel. First and foremost, the great President Simu Liu. He is, of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe's, the biggest cinematic universe in the world's newest superhero as Shang-Chi, which everyone has to see on September 3rd. Next is Uncle Randall Park, best known for his incredible comedic roles in the pioneering and groundbreaking Fresh Off the Boat and Always Be My Maybe, who is everyone's favorite diehard love interest. He also, of course, plays super FBI agent Jimmy Woo on the world's most watched show this year, WandaVision, which is excellent. And finally, last but never least, is our great friend, the Madam Olivia Munn, who of course needs no introduction because she's been in so many movies and shows. But I especially admire Olivia so much because she's done so much activism lately. And let's not forget, was Marvel's first superhero of Asian descent as X-Men's Psylocke. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks for having us. So great to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's begin first with, and anyone can answer. I'd love for everyone to articulate, why does being API on screen at the highest scales of superhero matter? And almost more importantly, what does this new age, new breed of superhero look like?
Well, representation matters. I mean, that's something that we've been hearing so much. But, I know we can all speak to the fact that there are only, a handful of people who look like us that were on these big screens. It really is hard to imagine if things are possible for you. It's really hard for your dreams to really take shape and to grow if you don't even know they're possible. And I remember, like the first ones for me were like, Sandra Oh, Na Wen, that was like, those are like really monumental moments for me to see these people on screen and not only playing stereotypical Asian roles and realizing that you really can be full 360-degree human beings on screen.
Seeing is becoming, as it were, right? Simu, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty personal take on this. When I was struggling as an actor in like 2013, 2014, I just kind of told my parents that I wasn't going to be an accountant anymore, and they were like, "We're never speaking to you again." I had a number of odd jobs that kind of kept me financially afloat, and one of them was actually playing Spider-Man for kids' birthday parties, and I would like drive to the place in like my tights. I would put the cowl or the mask on, knock on the door and be like, "Hey kids," and I would do all the poses and everything. And I remember like my instructions were very, very clear. Under no circumstances was I to take off the mask, because the moment that kids saw my face and they saw that I was not white, I was Asian, the entire illusion or the believability of that superhero experience would be shattered. So I think that that always kind of stayed with me throughout my career, because like a lot of people, I think I grew up believing in the power of superheroes.
I mean, the thing that like is so cool about superheroes to me, I mean, the powers and all that is great. That's fun, but I think we all really identify with the kind of the humanity, the struggle, or the place where these heroes are. From a human perspective, like the struggles they have to endure before they embrace those powers or find those powers, and I think that's what we all can identify. I think, yeah, like Simu said, it's very, superheroes are aspirational, so it's for like an Asian kid to see Simu on the screen and to identify with those struggles, and the human stuff is like, and then to see him kick ass. And to see him like be good, like for the greater good, I think that's like really, really important. But not just for Asian kids to see that, but for all kids to see that and to want to put themselves in Simu's shoes, like that's very powerful.
Yeah. Brenda, let's go down that path, because it's not good enough for us just to be great in physical might, right? It's also important for us to be good on the inside. And I feel like also there's this lesson of every superhero's superpower is actually really just a magical manifestation of their struggle internally and or that human strength they're trying to discover. And I would argue one of, if not your greatest strength, both as a human being, but also inexplicably what every character you play is your goodness. And your goodness that's not meek or soft or anything like that, but it feels very strong and sincere. And I'm wondering, both on screen, but then also in real life, how do you maintain your goodness? Especially because, sad to say, it's increasingly rare these days among people.
Oh, yeah. You don't know me that well. I'm a horrible person.
We all are, don't worry.
I don't think about it too much, really, in terms of myself. I just kind of try to I just pursue fun. And fun for me is like being around good people and being good to those people and being good to people, because it's fun, because when you're good to people, they give you goodness back. Generally, it's just like how it works. It's physics, but I don't think about it. But I do think that, as far as Jimmy Woo, I think, a lot of people say he's not a superhero, and he isn't in the traditional sense, but I like to look at him as like a superhero, and his power is like kindness and sincerity, Yeah. And I hope that, kids, when they see that they also want to be like, oh, I want to be like Jimmy Woo too.
Actually, you bring up a really important point. I think Olivia, I've gotten to know a little bit more through our activism work, and something that I've been just awestruck on Olivia is everyone talks about doing the work, but when you're literally texting victims to get their GoFundMe's up or getting them, pepper spray or trying to console them with mental health, you're at a different level. And that's indeed what Olivia has done. I'm honestly still shocked that Olivia is like texting all these victims constantly, because it's taxing and you want to deliver. And so Olivia, across your multi-hyphenate life, actress, activist, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and so forth, how do you maintain hope? And then even on set, I mean, you've been very vocal, right, about certain things.
Yeah. Well, it's really easy to maintain hope right now. I'll say that again so you guys. It's really easy to maintain hope right now because of the massive amount of support that we have from other. The Asian American group chats that we're in now, and being able to reach out to others and be able to talk, and everyone standing up for each other, and then the alliances that are going on around the world, and other cultures, other countries that are trying to support us and trying to help us stop Asian hate. That is the thing that brings me hope, because it's really tough when it happens and we're screaming into an echo chamber. And then later on, everyone's like, oh, wait, we didn't know. And I think that's what happens when you are part of a marginalized group. Our pain just stays centralized to us. And it's, and it has been, there's a lot of times in my life and my career where you just feel beaten down and feel like there's going to be an extra target on me because I am a minority. It is the unspoken rule that people don't want to believe in, because you can't really map it out. You can't exactly say it, but it's part of the white supremacy that has ruled over our country and our society for so long. And so we're easier targets, even if we have a sense of unity with each other. We have been fighting these individual fights on our own, but now we have such a huge support system with each other that it does create so much hope that things are getting better. And also, what happened with my friend Sam and his mother, there was so much hope, because when we reached out to social media and asked them to help us find this assailant who attacked his mother, within less than 24 hours, they had found the guy. And people want to talk about how negative social media is and the internet is. There are some really great positive parts of it. And one of those is that, they helped us find this guy. So there's a lot of hope, I think.
Speaking of social media and collectives that are unifying, like subtle Asian traits and so forth, the thing that I've been most impressed by with Simu is not just being on Canada's most watched show ever, not just about to be the biggest superhero and star in the world and the most successful film that we'll ever see, but no pressure. But is that Simu's consistently used this platform in a thoughtful way, and that can be difficult to manage. So, like Simu, as this superhero, but also as a real life superhero, how do you think about balancing both? Because you have so much weight on your Atlas shoulders.
First of all, I wish you could be my hype man, like just every day. That would be wonderful. If every time I saw my parents, I could just bring you along, I think they might actually be proud of what I was doing. Look, I've been fortunate enough to have built a career playing these Asian roles that speak to some degree some sort of diasporic experience, whether it's playing Jung on 5 seasons of Kim's Convenience, or this next amazing role / journey that I'm on. As much as you want to talk about, or I don't care if you believe or don't believe in determinism or fate or something, but it really just feels like the universe kind of put me in a position, and all I had to do was say yes. I mean, from day one on Kim's Convenience, we were being asked, how does it feel to be a minority on TV? How does it feel to be, the Asian family? And in the beginning, I think, first of all, I was a lot younger. And second, I felt a lot more alone because I didn't know people like Olivia and Randall. I maybe shied away from those questions. But then as time went on, and I kind of watched the world responding to the show, and also had the opportunity to kind of travel around and speak to students in colleges and Asian American student unions and whatnot, I started to really kind of I felt the heartbeat of Asian America, and certainly Asian Canada too, and it's just I kind of felt this general malaise about the way that people were being treated, and just this lack of some sort of figure just to tell them that it was okay to stand up tall and take up space and to belong. And it's something that we as a community have struggled with for so long, is taking up space. And so, you know, the more I kind of felt that around me, the more I was like, I know what I have to do, and I have to make sure that these people know. If it comes from me, fine. And it's going to come from people like Olivia and Randall too. But we need to be those voices that let people know that despite all of what is happening right now, despite people who are, you know, accosting Asian Americans, Asian people on the street, telling them that they don't belong, to go back, that they are responsible for the coronavirus, that we have an equal and opposing force that tells them, no, you stand strong, you belong right where you are, and you're worthy. So that's honestly been kind of the driving force behind, you know, how I choose to conduct myself on social media. And you know, who knows, that'll change. We're all still growing and evolving, and I'll find new and hopefully better ways to do that. But I think the core of that will always be the same.
Final piece is Act to Change, of course, is the leading nonprofit focusing on ending bullying against API youth. And while delving into the world of superheroes, I think sometimes can be considered fantasy, I think we realize also that fantasy also provides self-care, especially for kids that might be struggling or in places where they don't have access to people like you or even real life heroes. And so I'd like to close out with this question. What would you tell your middle school self, the angsty, whatever it was, 13 to 15-year-old, if he, she, or they were joining us today and looking up to you to be their hero? What would you tell them? And anyone can start.
I guess since we were just talking about this, I'll go. I would say this: don't let anybody tell you that you don't belong exactly where you are. I would say you being here is the result of either, you know, whether it was your parents or your grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, an incredible journey that they undertook, risking everything in order to build a new life for your family and to start a new journey. And that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to take immense pride in. That is your Asian American story, and it's precious, and it's worth protecting. It's worth fighting for, and it's worth being proud of.
Beautiful. Olivia, what do you think?
I think I would say that, you know, being bullied feels powerless because you are powerless over what other people say about you, but you are powerful in how you respond. And if you choose to respond with dignity and kindness, then you can always lay your head down at night feeling good about yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but when you do have a strong sense of self and you know the truth about who you are, that is what will carry you through the tough times.
Go ahead, Randall.
Wait, this is to my middle school self?
Your middle school self 5 years ago, what would you, or 10 years ago? Math, hard.
I mean, my middle school self was, I was definitely an anxious kid. I think I would tell myself that failing and making mistakes and being an outsider, it may suck in the moment, but it's a great gift. All of that stuff is a great gift, and losing is a great gift. It gives you the opportunity to learn and grow, and it'll make you a great person down the road if you can, you know, endure it and grow from it. So it's okay to not feel like you belong, you know, and just, you will find your people.
And avoid those things. Like Randall says, it does make you stronger. You have to figure out a way to get through it, because those lessons and those pathways in your brain of when you figure out, how did I get through that, that will happen in your life later, because tough times will never leave your life. We can't escape that. But the one thing in life, there's two things in life we can never escape, which is great joy and great sadness. So learn to experience both in a healthy way.
This is good. I feel like we should be paying y'all for therapy. But no, in all sincerity, thank y'all so much for being here. As we all know, it's APOM, but it's also Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's also today Anti-Bullying Day. So as great multi-hyphenates, artistically, commercially, and so forth, but also just multi-hyphenates as people, thank you for creating this space and being able to be here with Act to Change.
If you're enjoying the panels that you are watching today, you can head over to our YouTube to check out the full unedited conversations, which we will be posting after the event. I want to take a moment to recognize the COVID-19 situation that is affecting parts of our community in India and Nepal. If you're able to please find organizations that you feel comfortable with to help with the COVID-19 relief there, we'd really appreciate it. Here at home, there are so many incredible organizations on the ground supporting our AAPI communities. I hope that you'll consider supporting them as well. And please also consider making a tax-deductible donation today to Act to Change. We still have some exciting speakers coming up, but I want to take a moment also to thank our amazing board at Act to Change who worked around the clock to put today together. The many, many states, cities, elected officials, and organizations who are participating. I want to thank all of our sponsors, and I want to give a big thank you to all of our speakers who have shown our youth that you are beautiful, funny, exceptional, leaders. You can make a difference. Your voices matter. You are superheroes. Together, we can end bullying. Coming up next, some exciting announcements, awards, and final words from some very, very special guests. Thank you all for being here.
Chung, I'm the creative director over at Yum Yum F, and I also proudly serve on Act to Change's advisory council. This year, Act to Change is giving out our first ever annual awards to honor the great work being done in the community to end bullying and hate. So I'm proud to announce two of the awards. The first award is Act to Change's Partnership of the Year. And this award goes to an organization that's been an outstanding partner in pursuing Act to Change's mission of creating a world where all AAPI youth have the opportunity to grow up feeling proud of their identity and sharing their stories. And our Partnership of the Year award goes to the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. The Leadership Conference has been an incredible partner in helping us foster solidarity and build coalitions in our collective fight against racism. Our next award is the Allied Organization of the Year award. This award recognizes an organization's incredible contributions to the AAPI community. This award goes to Stop AAPI Hate. Stop AAPI Hate is a reporting center that was launched in response to the anti-Asian sentiment that grew during the COVID-19 pandemic. This organization has created and shared resources that have been crucial in identifying ways we can all actively be allies in solidarity across the nation. So congratulations again to both the Leadership Conference and Stop AAPI Hate for your support, your allyship, and your overall impact in helping create a world free of bullying and harassment. And now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to my fellow advisory council member, the one and only Tan France.
Hello everyone, my name is Tan France, and along with being an international stylist and fashion expert and your favourite member of the Queer Eye Fab 5, I also proudly serve on Act to Change's Advisory Council, where I've been able to get to know so many brilliant and inspiring youth activists all across the country who are dedicated to changing their school's culture and their local communities to be more inclusive and welcoming for all. Last fall, I was able to host Homeroom with Tan France, which was a youth program that gave student leaders across 10 different schools all over the US the chance to speak with me about their experiences with bullying and the incredible things that they're doing to stop this culture of ignorance and hate. I was so incredibly humbled and honored to give some of my own advice and share my own lived experiences growing up, and I knew that I had to do this at least one more time. So, starting today, Tuesday, May 18th to Tuesday, June 1st, applications will be opening up for middle and high schools across the country from grades 6 to 12 to apply for another round of Homeroom with Tan. 5 lucky schools will be accepted to have a 30-minute Zoom session with me this summer. Please check out acttochange.org/nominate-homeroom or check out our social media pages for more information. And lastly, I'm also incredibly excited to announce Act to Change's first annual Youth Activist of the Year award. These phenomenal young women were integral to our work in addressing bullying, racism, and xenophobia in the face of COVID-19. The Racism is a Virus toolkit that they created has been utilized and shared across countless community partners and agencies all over the country. So, without further ado, congratulations to our KPAL interns, Kathleen Malari, Komal Kamdar, and Caroline Im. You are all doing such incredibly important work, and I am so honored to have had the opportunity to announce this award. Thank you all again so much for all that you do to help stop AAPI bullying and hate.
Aloha everyone, this is Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii. I'm proud to join Act to Change on AAPI Anti-Bullying Day. I'm glad that the United States Senate, in a 94-1 vote, voted to pass the COVID-19 hate crimes bill. I think it's the first time that the Senate took this kind of specific kind of action to say we stand with the AAPI community. We're not going to sit on the sidelines while these kinds of attacks are happening to our community. So we need more of this kind of recognition. When we speak up for our own community, we are speaking up for all the other minorities that are targeted too often in our country. And on this day, on Anti-Bullying Day, we should all once again come together so that we can make the change that our country needs.
Hi everyone, I'm Congressman Andy Kim from New Jersey. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to stand up alongside all of you against bullying and hatred. For us to be able to step up and say that this anger, this hatred, this division, this racism that's out there in our country right now, that doesn't speak for us. Right now, the Asian American Pacific Islander community, the API community is hurting. We've experienced a level of violence and discrimination, bullying in ways that are even worse than what's happened before. And I've experienced this myself throughout my life, but I've seen it getting worse. And as a father of a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, two little baby boys that I want to make sure grow up in a safe environment, I want to make sure that we continue to stand up against bullying, against hatred, and say that this is not who we are. We are a loving nation and we want to come together. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng from Queens, New York. Thank you, Malik, for the work, constant work that Act to Change has been doing and for hosting this 3rd annual National AAPI Day against bullying and hate. During COVID-19, we've witnessed unspeakable acts of violence and even death against our community. It breaks my heart to see such hateful incidents. And in Congress, I continue to push my COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act to help combat the problem. But I believe this moment in history has planted new seeds of friendship and allyship. Today, the AAPI community is joined by those from the Black, Latinx, Native American, and other communities in our shared commitment to ending the violence and hate against us. I'm so encouraged by this and believe better days are ahead. On National AAPI Day against bullying and hate, let us go forward in solidarity within our community and lock arms with other communities. Step by step, we will build a more perfect union. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The American story as we know it would not exist if it were not for the strength of the AAPI community. And in honoring Asian American Heritage Month, we are reminded of the contributions of Asian Americans who have come to our shores from faraway nations, and of the continued contributions of their children and their children's children. But as we celebrate this rich history and diversity among our community this month, we can't overlook the painful and difficult year we've just endured in 2020. But this is a month of celebration, so I don't just want to reflect on the pain our communities have felt. It's important that we celebrate our joys as well, to celebrate our history and all that we've done to shape America into the beautiful, albeit flawed, nation she is today, and strive for that more perfect union every single day. It is time to honor both how far we've come and to recognize the work still left to be done to ensure that every Asian American and Pacific Islander and every other person, regardless of race, can achieve the American dream. Thank you.
Aloha kako. I'm Congressman Kaili Kahele of Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District. In May, we celebrate the long history of achievements of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders across the United States. But our great accomplishments are interwoven with our constant struggle as to this day, many of our community members continue to face unfounded hate, discrimination, and violence. To those who would try to marginalize us and question our patriotism, I have one message for you. This country is a nation of immigrants. We are all Americans, and we are part of the very fabric that makes this country great. Today, as we commemorate May 18th as National AAPI Day Against Hate and Bullying, we stand together to fight back against racism and xenophobia. We honor the struggles and resilience of those that came before us and teach our children to be proud of their culture, their languages, their heritage, and that America is their home. Mahalo.
I'm here, grew up on the shores of America. Open up shop, ran stores in America. Wash windows, clean floors in America. Only trust me with your chores in America. Just need one open door in America. Cried when we elected 44 for America. My family's here, fought wars for America. On TV, just a whore for America. I get the memo, this is your America. Just take my money, tax forms in America. Take a food, charge more in America. Use a culture for decor in America. History that you can't ignore. America, I'm the leader I was looking for. America, never silent, keeping score. America, and it's time I needed more. We're still here, we're going strong, and we're getting tired of proving we belong. We're still here, we're going strong, and we're getting tired of proving we belong. Proving we belong.
We've come a long way, but what's changed? Since Vincent Chin, the difference just names. Xiao Jia Dao, Yao Sun Jia, know these names. Hyun Jung Sun Jung Young, we have names. Victims, silence, evicted from our lives. Cause our skin is the color they love to villainize. What if it's food, movies, and women they love to fetishize? What if it's COVID-19, then China virus. Calling us outsiders, we built this country too, and they built it alongside us. One generation, two